Theodicy, the problem of a good God and the existence of evil. Day after day, people experience large amounts of pain and suffering. As a fix for our problems, we all attempt to escape our hardships in more ways than one, but for some, prayer is at the top of the list. For those who choose to pray to their gods to help them out for their troubles, have you ever thought it was Him that could have put you there? And in response to that, you may ask why. This is where theodicy and the problem of evil become introduced. The definition of theodicy is shorthand for the problem of evil in the face of God, and also shorthand for the formulation for the resolution of the problem of evil. A common definition used is the defense of, the justice, and the righteousness of God in the face of evil. The problem of evil is defined as that if God is a three-o God, then how does He allow evil to occur? A three-o God is a God that is omniscient, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful, and omnibenevolent, all-good. The problem of evil is not the problem of whether God exists, but it is rather what God's motive is behind the evil that exists. There is a comparison of humans and dogs made to clarify the problem of evil and God's role He has with us. The comparison goes, dogs love their humans, but often find us unfathomable, particularly when we permit them to suffer for their own good, as when we take them to the vet or willingly withhold something they want. There is also more of a breakdown of the problem to help explain it. The experiential problem of evil is an explanation for the actual evils of the world. In other words, it could be explained as why the particular evils that exist are the ones that are permitted. Within the definition of the problem, there are also different types of evil. Those two types are moral and natural evil. Moral evils are evils that are intentional human acts. Some examples are the acts of cruelty, the acts of betrayal, the acts of deception. Also, moral evil typically involves two persons, which are the perpetrator or agent and the victim. Natural evil, on the other hand, is not caused by any human being. A few examples of natural evil are natural death, illness, accident, or natural disaster. There is an argument that God does not exist based on natural evil. The argument is that if God exists, then there is a being who is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent. So if there is a being that was omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent, then there would be no natural evil in the world. There is natural evil in the world, so therefore God does not exist. Both types of evil are divided into two different subcategories: physical evil and metaphysical evil. Physical evil means that there exists bodily pain or mental anguish. Examples of this are fear, illness, grief, or war. Metaphysical evil refers to such things as imperfection and chance. For example, there are criminals going unpunished or deformities. The origin of the problem of evil is difficult to pinpoint because it has many different pieces coming from different places. The early Stoics believed that the world was providentially ordered. They had to explain how evil existed alongside divine governance. Everything that happens is in accordance with a cosmic providence, but particular moral evils are the responsibility of men. It is thought that it was first discussed by a Greek philosopher named Epicurus in 371 to 270 BC. St. Augustine also stated points defending theodicy in the early Christian age, 354 to 430 AD. Either God cannot establish evil, or He will not. If He cannot, then He is not all-powerful. If He will not, then He is not all-good. He too tried denying the existence of moral evil by saying that what we perceive as evil is only the different distance we have from God. In addition, he believed that hell is the highest alienation from God. Theodicy can be defined in a few different subcategories and has different meaning to different groups. The Irenaean theodicy stems from Saint Irenaeus, 130 to 202 AD. He thought that humanity wasn't created perfect, but needed growth to reach spiritual perfection, and that we could grow by following God's laws. He believed that God doesn't intervene with humanity because it would interfere with humans' free will. Philosopher John Hick born in 1922, continued on the view of St. Irenaeus. He felt that the process of soul-making was a response to evil. His thoughts were that soul-making involves the battle to keep religious faith, since we aren't born knowing of his existence and it isn't easy to gain knowledge of. Also, he believes that epidemic existence occurs, which is the separation between human beings and the gods. There are arguments that state that some don't get to live long enough to develop spirituality either. John Hick responds with saying that there could be a heavenly reward in the possible afterlife. Another theory of the problem with evil is the Augustinian theodicy. Alvin Plantinga wrote in 1974 in his book God, Freedom, and Evil that he believed that it was impossible for God to have created an all-good person. Anthony Few and J. L. Mackey argued that God could have created good robots with free will. A second part of the Augustinian theodicy is that the belief that the fall of humanity and the development of evil came after the Garden of Eden disobedience. A further explanation is that man is responsible for evil by being led away from Satan. The defense against God having no act against evil is that he showed his love by bringing Christ into the world. The final part of the Augustinian theodicy is the free will argument. The free will argument states that evil is the result from human error, which results from free will. If we didn't have free will, then we would be robots. God would rather have a world of free agents versus a world full of robots. Evil is both unavoidable and unfortunate outcome of free will. If God were to interfere, he would be ridding us of our free will. Therefore, God can't be held responsible for evil nor guilty for neglecting to intervene on the evil. Different objections to free will argument. One being, why must there be choices between good and evil? Couldn't there be choices only between separate options that are both good? Another is the question of why does God require worship at all? If he is perfect, then how come he needs people to adore him, especially people who are as flawed like humans? Also, another objection is that if the choice between good and evil is essential to determine who is to be saved, then is there no sin in heaven? And if there is no sin in heaven, then why be mortal and need and experience pain and suffering? Why not just go from creation straight to heaven? Additionally, if God is omnipotent, then why did he create humans when he knew they would sin, and how can he be seen as innocent when he knew that sinning is inevitable? The last and most recent theodicy is the process theodicy. The process theodicy revolves around the idea that the reality of God is not fixed and God himself is still developing. Another big idea is that God is dipolar. The two different poles of God, according to the process theodicy, are the mental and the physical. For the mental side, it is believed that God is the soul of the world, and that he shapes and moves the world by the use of persuasion. The physical side shows that the material world almost acts as if the world is God's body, and that God did not create the world as it is today, but rather persuaded life through the path of evolution to what has become. Because of the relationship of the two poles, God is partially distant and partially immersed. Within the process theodicy, there is the belief that any suffering that is done is also done to God. Also, creation is seen as cooperation between God and all other beings. God cannot force humans to do his will, but he can try to influence them. It is a choice left up to humanity. This idea of the process theodicy can be traced back to Greek philosopher Heraclitus, who lived around 500 BC. The idea became popular in the 19th century in correlation with the evolutionary theory. It is most commonly associated, though, with English philosopher Alfred Whitehead, who lived from 1816 to 1947. Whitehead wrote the book Process and Reality, an Essay of Cosmology in 1929, but his main application was put forward by his pupil, American philosopher Charles Hartstone. Hartstone contributed by writing The Divine Relativity in 1948 and also The Logic of Perfection in 1962. There is no final answer to where evil comes from or if it is caused by God, then why? But there are many different ideas and aspects that are possible. Taking in the different theodicies, the Irenaean, the Augustinian, and the process, there are different approaches that are all possible solutions to the problem of evil. Unfortunately, there won't ever be a right or wrong answer, so we will never know which is right, but this correlates with religion. As there won't ever be one right religion and many wrong ones, there will never be one correct theodicy and other incorrect ones. Still to this day, philosophers spend much of their time studying this issue, but for us, there is no answer needed, because the only thing that we depend on is where our faith lies and where our belief falls.